do a quick review about rounding. Okay, rounding means when I ask you to round to the nearest 1 decimal, or to the nearest 2 decimal, or to the nearest tenth, I will use different vocabulary to ask you to round. So rounding is, instead of having too many numbers after the decimal, right, you're going to have to stop at a certain point. You can't keep going, right? You can't write all the numbers that the calculator gives you, right? So I usually ask you to round to the nearest 1 decimal or to the nearest 2 decimals, right? It depends on what the question is asking. So to round, you have to decide which digit you need to round to. Okay? So basically, what is your last digit that you want to keep? That's usually either the question asks you, tell you to what digit, or I give you some rules. So, if, let's say that I want you to keep it to the first decimal, okay? So that means you're gonna have to keep it to 1 number. So you're gonna have to look at the number that's after it. If the number after it is greater than 5 or greater, then you round this up. If this number is less than 5, then you keep this the same. So let's write the rules and I'll show you examples. So leave it the same if the next digit is less than 5. Increase it by 1 if the next digit is 5 or greater. So for the purpose of this course, this is the rules that we're going to use. There's other rules that are a little bit complicated when it comes to the number 5 itself, okay? But for the purpose of this course and the purpose of the college courses, we do that, okay? So here's a question. Let's say I have 12.324, okay? And I want you to round to the nearest 1 decimal, okay? So to the nearest 1 decimal, what number is to the nearest 1 decimal? What's my 1 decimal? So this is your decimal, 1 decimal, so that's 3, okay? What number is after the 3? I have a 2. Because this is a 2, then I keep the 3 the same. I don't do anything with it. So that rounds to 12.3, done. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay? Now, let's say if I have 13.671. Okay? And again, I'm asking you to round to the nearest 1 decimal. Where's my 1 decimal? 6. So that's the number that's right after the decimal, right? What comes after the 6? 7. 7 greater than 5? Yes, it is, right? 7 is greater than 5. So what happens is I have to round this 1 up. So that becomes 13.7. Okay? So it depends on the digit that comes right after it. If that digit is greater than 5 or greater, it could be 5 as well, then you have to round it up. Okay? Let's look at another example. Let's say if I have 5.2653. Okay? And I want you to round to the nearest 2 decimal. So I want 2 decimal to be in my answer. What number am I looking at? I'm looking at the 6 because that's the second number after the decimal, right? What comes after the 6? What's after the 6 here? 5. Because it's 5 or greater, then what do I do with the 6? Round it up, right? Because this is 5 or greater, then it's going to be 5.27. Are we okay with that? usually they don't use the words, usually they either use one decimal place or to two decimal places, but there's terminology that comes with it. Like sometimes they use to the 10th or to the 100th, okay? You have to understand these terminologies so you know what is the decimal place that they're looking at, okay? So, I'm gonna the terminology here. So, decimal is what breaks your hundreds, ones, and tens, and whatever from your decimals. Okay. So before the decimal, we have the ones. Okay. So these are your ones. I should write them like this. These right here are your ones. Okay. So the first digit before the decimal is they're called the ones. How about this one? So if you have this, what do we call this? Tens. The tens. Okay. If you're going to read this is going to be 234, right? So these are the hundreds. That's an E after the R. Hundreds. And then thousands. Okay, so we have the thousands in this case. We have the hundreds, the tens, and the ones. The ones are the first one that right before the decimal. Now, after the decimal, we're going to start with the tenth. So it's going to have a TH at the end. Okay? So when I say round to the nearest tenth, I mean round to the nearest one decimal. Okay? So tenth. T-E-N-T-H. Okay? Then this is going to be to the nearest hundredth. Okay. And this is thousands with a TH at the end. Thousand. And this is the 10,000s, which we never do this, but just in case. I'm just gonna write number 10. So the 10,000 TH. Okay? So, you need to know this terminology because when the question asks you round to the nearest hundredth, you need to know what that means. Okay? Okay, so far we only did examples with decimals and we rounded the decimals. Okay? But sometimes a question asks you to round to the nearest, let's say 10. Right? So you're going to have to know how to do this. So let's look at the question here. So in this case, it's asking you to round to the nearest 10. So I have 32.45. Which number is my 10 digit? So the 2 is the ones, right? Because that's the first one before the decimal, right? It's the 3, right? Because you see that 2 digits decimal, right? So basically this is my 10 digit. Now, it's similar to rounding decimals. Okay, you're going to look at the number after it. What's the number after it? It's a 2, right? So since it's a 2, what do you do with that number 3? You leave it the same, okay? The difference right now is I have to drop this down to a 0. So what that means, okay, 32.45 0.45 is closer to 30 than it is to 40. Okay? So this number, just the ones, they're going to become a 0. Okay? Why? Because this is 32.45. You're rounding. Okay? So when I say your answer is almost what? What am I going to say? Your answer is almost 3. Is that right? No. Right? If I'm going to say your answer is almost equal to 30, right? Because 32 is closer to 30 than it is to any other number, right? When you're rounding, you're always rounding to perfect numbers, okay? So 30, 40, if you're rounding to the tens, okay? If you're rounding to the 100, it will be 300. If you're rounding to the 1,000, it will be 3,000, okay? It depends on what you're rounding to, okay? So if I'm looking at my numbers here, and I have, because I'm rounding to the 10, so that means I'm going to look at the tens. Right? Now, 32 falls right here. 32.45 is almost right here, right? So what is it closer to? Is it closer to 30 or is it closer to 40? 30. So that's why it rounds to 30. Okay? Does that make sense to you guys? Okay? Because you're rounding to the nearest 10. Now, where is my 10 here? Where's my 10 digit? 2. Okay? What comes after the 2? It's a 7, right? So what do I have to do with the 2s? With a 2? Round it up, right? So that becomes 130, right? And think about it this way. If I'm counting by tens, remember that you're counting by tens. If I'm counting by tens, I'm going to start at the 100 just because I don't have room for everything, right? 100, 110, 120, 130, right? I'm counting by 10 because the question is saying tens, right? 127.9 falls right here, so it's closer to the 130, okay? So when I estimate and say it's closer to or it's almost, I'm going to say it's almost 1. So the next question is saying round to the nearest 10th. What digit is a 10th? 1. In this case, yeah, it's number 1. So it's the first digit right after the decimal, right? Because it has a TH at the end. So after the 1, I have number 7, right? So what do I do with the 1? Do I keep it the same or do I round it?
Becomes a 2.
It becomes a 2. How about the next one? What's my 10th digit?
3.
3? What comes after the 3 in this case?
0.
0. So what do I do with the 3?
Keep it the same.
Keep it the same. Are we okay with this? I'm going to do one more question with you, and I'm going to leave you to do the other 3. Okay? So I'm going to do this one right here. 3B. So 3 is asking you to round to the nearest hundredth. So which number is my 100th term, my 100th digit. 100th with a TH. So it's the first 9, right? This one, because that's 10th, 100th, right? What comes after the 9? So what number do I have after the 9? I have another 9, okay? So that means I have to round this 9 to up, right? When you round a 9 up, what do you round it to? 10, okay? Now, because you're gonna have to round this to a 10, what happens is I have to make the preceding one, the 10th, go up by 1, right? So that's gonna be 142.10. Because this is a 10, right? It's gonna affect the 10th, and that's gonna become 10. Okay? It's like, think about, let's say when you go and buy stuff, and they say like the price is $59.99, right? What does that mean? 60. That's 60, right? So what's happening is if you're rounding to the nearest dollar, right? If you're rounding to the nearest dollar, right? Which is this 9. After the 9 comes a 9, so I have to raise this one up. By raising this one up, I have to make this a 60. So that becomes a $60, right? So it's the same thing here. Are you guys okay with that? All right, so I want you to do the other 3, and I'll come and check on you, and then there is a worksheet that you're gonna work on, and there is one more lesson that I want to do today.